Merry Christmas, digital world. Welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced In Later, continuing our merry Yuletide themes for this month of December as we tick ever closer to the lovely day that is Christmas Day. I hope you have enjoyed my last couple of vids. They've been fairly light and breezy, nothing too intense or controversial or anything like that. We basically just confirmed Christmas movies are good for reasons being Christmas itself is good. We touched on It's a Wonderful Life, which could be the best Christmas movie of all time. If you haven't seen it by now, watch it. Really, the only person you're punishing is yourself. And last week I touched in on a personal favorite of Spliced In Later, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the movie, which is a rather unknown film, although I did get some very aggressive positive feedback to even mentioning that film existed last week. So again, thank you for listening, everybody. Thanks for the positive feedback and support. It's always lovely to hear it. But for this week, we are jumping in onto a topic which I may have briefly alluded to over a year ago. And it's been there. It's been a controversial statement that I made. It's been wandering around in the back of my mind. Once again, please excuse if you hear any background noises. My cats are things that I own now, and I don't want to be out of the room with them because they're adorable. At the moment, they are looking at the Christmas tree, so I can only assume all hell is about to break loose. But a year ago, the only Christmas thing I really did, because I was only starting off the podcast, I was only really jumping into it, was I did a top 10, which is one of my trademarks, is what we've become rather famous for here on Spliced In Later. But for that episode, it was a top 12 because of the 12 days of Christmas, and I listed the top 12 Christmas movies that I enjoyed. There's a bunch of really good movies on there. No need really repeating that again. I will say that for next week, I may go back and just explain why the number one movie was my favorite, because it's getting to a point where it's time for my annual rewatch of that movie. But until then, we'll just reiterate and say if you want to know what the top 12 Christmas movies are, have a look at that video on YouTube, have a listen to an episode on Spotify, however you want to do it. It's a good listen, it's a good watch, it's a good read, however you want to do it. I rank it quite high on the episodes that I have done, so check that out if you're curious. But at the start of it, when I was setting up the parameters, as I do for most of my countdowns, I said that a rather controversial thing. I said that what makes a Christmas movie is very specific, and that is that the point of the movie has to be that it is a Christmas theme or thing. So Santa, elves, Christmas parties, Christmas snow, all of that jam. And specifically, to quell any anger or resentment or expectations, I said that Die Hard would not be included on the list because I did not consider Die Hard to be a Christmas movie. Well, that was not received rather well. I know one particular person who was not happy with me. I don't believe they listen to my podcast anymore. So you can tell that this thing of Die Hard being a Christmas movie is one of immense topic and conversation. And not just Die Hard itself, but what does define a Christmas movie? I will say that a year later, having sat on it, having thought about it, having had discussions with people, having a look at movies that exist, indeed 2020, there has been a lack of new movies, so I have gone back and watched a lot of old movies and seen where Christmas pops up in some of them. And it's basically come down that I have changed my perception a bit. I still stand by my belief that Die Hard wouldn't have been on my top 12 days of Christmas, because when I'm going to watch a Christmas movie, Die Hard for me is not specifically what I'm looking for. Die Hard is still a fantastic movie, but for me, if I want to watch a Christmas movie, if I want to get into the Christmas spirit, Die Hard is not usually the thing that I go for. But for other people, that's exactly what they go for. It's a Christmas tradition. I know one person who watches Die Hard every Christmas Eve, and good on them. But as I've come to establish over the year, as the main theme of this show and these episodes are, is that there's no point being closed-minded. There's no point putting specifications on things, restrictions on things, because life's too short to dictate whether a movie is a Christmas movie or not. So I have updated my opinion. Moreover, my opinion of what parameters are for a Christmas movie. And it's almost like the world itself knew that I was going to address Die Hard this week, because so much of this particular topic has come up over the past week. For instance, a very popular YouTube company that I watch every week called Watcher recently did a top 5 beatdown for Christmas movies, where they listed their top 5 Christmas movies. And specifically, of course, Die Hard came up there, along with a couple of other movies which I never really considered to be Christmas movies, such as Batman Returns. But they defined it as a Christmas movie is something that just has Christmas in the movie. It doesn't have to be a Christmas theme. It doesn't have to be a Christmas parameter, but Christmas itself has to be a part of the story. It has to be a topic that comes up that cannot happen at other parts of the year. Basically, the events of Batman Returns, for example, the ice princess that is stolen by the Penguin. She could not have been stolen if it were not Christmas. The Penguin himself was abandoned on Christmas Eve, hence his return to attack around Christmas time. Iron Man 3, for example. I know I'm probably going to list a couple superhero movies here, but there have been a few where Christmas has propped up. In the past, I've said Iron Man 3 is not a Christmas movie, but by these parameters, Tony Stark rejects the idea of Aldrich Killian on New Year's Eve, so around Christmas time, a year later, he comes back. Or is it 10 years? I think it's 10 years later. But anyway, it's that feeling of Yuletide festivity that sets everything in motion. So, by those parameters then, of course, Die Hard can be considered a Christmas movie. But the moral of today's episode basically is a Christmas movie can be whatever you want, really. I think to have the closed-mindedness that I had a year ago to say these are not Christmas movies, that's not fair on people who do like these movies and who do think they're Christmas movies. The moral of this show, this point, is that everyone is welcome. All things are good and all things are warranted depending on your beliefs. Everyone's beliefs are valid. Everyone's opinions are valid. And I have allowed myself to open my mind up to that point where I can appreciate that movies like Die Hard, Batman Returns, Iron Man 3, they can be Christmas movies. If you get the Christmas spirit out of them, if you get the Christmas joy out of them, then why not? Absolutely. And boy, do I love Die Hard. So, as an apology to discounting it a year ago, as an acceptance that people are anxiously watching this movie around Christmas time, in respect to people who cherish this movie for being a Christmas movie, I'm basically just going to give you my opinion of Die Hard the movie, my recommendation for it, and we'll see how we go. Basically, my recommendation for Die Hard is, oh my god, it is a great movie, and you should absolutely watch it if you haven't seen it. If you are unfamiliar with Die Hard and what the plot is, it's pretty simple. Bruce Willis, back in the olden days where he had hair, goes down to LA to meet up with his estranged wife, Holly Gennaro, at her work Christmas party. Haha, there it is. I believe they are trying to re-establish their relationship. It's on the rocks for sure. He's taken a job elsewhere as a cop. Things aren't going great. While he goes to her Christmas party at Nakatomi Plaza, it is overrun by terrorists led by the infamous Hans Gruber, played lovingly by the late Alan Rickman. One of his first actual acting roles, Hans Gruber. We're not clear exactly what these terrorists want, but they quickly round everybody up at the hospital party, the Christmas party, hold them for ransom, start getting on the phone to the police, and make their list of demands. Meanwhile, John McClane has hidden himself away. He was in the bathroom when things were happening. Coincidentally, he took his shoes off because someone told him to do that. Then he has to escape without his shoes into the air ducts in just his white singlet and pants, and then begins a one-man war against the terrorists, picking them off one by one until he eventually confronts Hans Gruber and saves the day. Now, this is definitely what cemented Bruce Willis as an iconic action star of the 80s. Die Hard itself is such a unique action trope. It certainly was unique at the time. Nowadays, everybody does the same thing. One man alone, trapped in a building with a certain amount of violent, evil individuals, and he goes through a series of events to pick them off one by one using his wits, his skills, his gunplay, blowing everything up along the way. No one can stop him. He's absolutely undefeatable, and he's also cocky, but he's got a wit about him. He's able to throw off his one-liners while he puts people down, and he's everyman. He's likable. You're on his side immediately, and you can't wait for him to take out somebody else in the most outlandish way possible. I'm sure every other action hero has done this since Bruce Willis. I'm sure Sylvester Stallone has done it, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Wesley Snipes. Harrison Ford, everybody's probably had a go at the McClane treatment. Die Hard is also famous for its iconic line from John McClane, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers," which came out in every Die Hard movie since then. Not so explicitly as we got into later films where they tried to score a PG-13 rating instead of an R rating, which means we had "Yippee-ki-yay, mother," a gunshot just crossed out the last word. I won't say it too often because then I have to click the explicit mark when I'm uploading my podcast. So you've had your one. I may say it again, I may not. We also get a wonderful bunch of supporting cast as well. This is very much Bruce Willis's film. It is very much his action thing, but without the cunning charm of Hans Gruber, it would certainly not be an entertaining way to see the two of them face off. He's a very sly, slimy, cunning terrorist leader who does not seem to be shaken at all through the whole movie. Everything's going to plan for him, but then when he finds out that somebody is taking out his minions one by one, he doesn't flip out. He doesn't start killing off his minions because he's so upset. He doesn't start shouting and screaming and losing his mind trying to figure out who is this man that's thwarting him. He comes across in this movie as mildly curious, impressed even, maybe a little annoyed as time goes on, but basically just, this is weird. I don't understand what this guy's up to. Oh, he's killed another one of my men. Ho, 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 now I have a machine gun. Well, we better do something about him. But continue the plan as normal, and hopefully we'll just sort things out as we go along. We've also got not so much a sidekick, but the lovable Reginald Vell Johnson as Sergeant Al Powell, who is the cop that first is made aware of the situation inside Nakatomi Plaza by McClane by way of a body being thrown onto his police car as he's doing a perimeter sweep. He is a very lovable, friendly cop who you can tell talking to him that something terrible has happened to him. It's made him unsure of himself. The repertoire he builds with McClane when they don't even really meet for 99% of the movie, they just talk over the radio, is one of mutual respect and admiration. Power respects McClane for literally waging war against the terrorists, and McClane respects Power because he can sense that this is one of the good cops, one of the ones who actually does the job to make a difference and to help people, not because he's all-powerful and police brutality and everything else that's going on in the world right about now. Basically, it is not a very long movie. It is only 89 minutes, I believe. It's very simple, straightforward, to the point. There's no twists, there's no turns, there's no traitor lurking in the midst who you don't realize until it's too late. There's no double cross from the terrorists to get one over on McClane. McClane doesn't have one last minute trick up his sleeve. It's just brute force, action-packed, with McClane getting further and further, scruffier, dirtier, bloodier, but piling up the bodies until eventually the final confrontation with Hans Gruber. It is a wonderful action movie, very simple, straightforward, to the point, just what you want from an action movie. Something you can just sit down and just absolutely enjoy as you're watching everybody get blown away. Die Hard 2 could also be considered a Christmas movie in the same parameters that I have just suggested, because it is also once again Christmas, and McClane has to go through the same issues that he went through in the first one, just at an airport. Die Hard 2, I think, tries to go a little bit too big compared to the simple premise of the first one, and there's definitely a lot more attempts at trying to have twists and turns and pull one over in the audience. But, you know, that's not really what we were looking for when we got the first Die Hard. That said, Die Hard 2 is also still a really enjoyable time at the movies and an enjoyable action film. Not long after that, the rest of the Die Hard films, definitely not considered Christmas movies, but great films, one of them, two of them. Die Hard 3, which might actually be my favorite Die Hard film, Die Hard with a Vengeance, where it has Bruce Willis team up with Samuel L. Jackson to chase down Jeremy Irons' Simon as he has riddles all over the city, and they have to solve his riddles before bombs go off. And while they're doing that, he's planning his own secret little heist involving gold, which is a great time. Then you had Live Free or Die Hard 4.0 if you're here in Australia, which brings John McClane into the modern world then in terms of terrorists using computers and code to wage war against people. Watered down, obviously, for a PG-13 rating. We didn't get our swears like we got, but still was an interesting plot, great characters, enough action as you could get from a PG-13 film, a fine enough film. And the last film, A Good Day to Die Hard, we won't even discuss, because it is not a Die Hard film, unfortunately. John McClane does not show up in the movie. It's just Bruce Willis being there, doing something. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know why anything happens in that movie. He goes to Russia for some reason. He's looking for John McClane's son, which is weird because John McClane is not in this movie. Case in point, you can just watch the first 4 Die Hard films, give the 5th one a miss, because you won't be missing anything. Finally, to wrap it all up, because of course I give Die Hard a full 10 out of 10, an absolute Spliced In Later recommendation, one of my absolute favourite films. It may not be in my top Christmas films, but again, I'm looking at my list of Christmas films in a closed mind. I may have opened it up to allow that Christmas movies can include anything that has Christmas in the movie as a theme, or a purpose, or a point, or a tool, or a story moment. But, you know, maybe that's just me still not allowing myself to fully embrace the variety of it is that can be Christmas films. If I did, maybe Die Hard might make it onto the list, but to be fair, nothing's going to knock my number 1 Christmas movie off, as we will revisit again next week. But I hope you have all enjoyed listening. I would once again like to offer my sincerest apologies to anyone who was offended a year ago when I said that Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. I recant the statement. I also firmly support anybody who absolutely believes this is a Christmas movie, who absolutely believes that is their number 1 Christmas movie, who watches it on Christmas Eve, who watches it religiously on Christmas Eve, who watches it as religiously as, say, I would watch A Muppet Christmas Carol or The Santa Claus or anything like that. And as a movie itself, as Die Hard as a movie, it's a sensational, fantastic movie. And just saying that it's a Christmas movie is just an added extra bonus to already absolutely entertaining film, bolstered by the wonderful performance by Bruce Willis as John McClane, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, that's the last time I will say that, Alan Rickman's Hans Gruber, and the mayhem that goes on in Nakatomi Plaza on Christmas Eve. So, if you're in the mood now, as I hope you might be, go on and put on Die Hard and celebrate Christmas. But once again, thank you all for listening to me. As always, I appreciate you. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope that I have been humble enough that you can forgive me if you were mad at me. If not, I don't know. I'm sorry about that. Maybe I'll make it up to you some other time. But, you know, what can we do? Until next week, the eve of Christmas, essentially, it'll only be a few days before Christmas, we will revisit The Muppet Christmas Carol, and I will absolutely go full into how much I love that movie and why it is my favorite Christmas movie. Because as you know in my rankings, by the time I get to the number 1 on the ranking, the time for the episodes are pushing 50 minutes. So I don't have that much time to really get into it. So we're going to rectify that. We're going to give a good 15 to 20 minute chat about why The Muppet Christmas Carol is my favorite Christmas film and why it's absolutely fantastic. But until then, I hope you all have a pleasant week. Enjoy your Christmas holidays and celebrations. Enjoy watching Die Hard. Stay safe, stay lovely to each other. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time. Oh, no.